So we're going to be making the new Walletta pattern from Casey Original. So I'm going to be making the large. Mine is going to be slightly different from what the original pattern says to use. I'm using a fun embossed vinyl. My lining, I'm going to be using waterproof canvas. So I am not using any leather. I'm not going to be using any glue. And then the RFID or RF, the stuff so people can't scan your cards. I don't have any of that material, so I'm not going to be using that either. So a few subtle differences on if you want to use leather versus vinyl and waterproof canvas. All right, so I have these are my side pieces. Oh wait, actually, these are my side pieces. And then I have my back and then the lining. So I'm going to set my lining aside for right now. Okay, so I have my centers marked at the top and the bottom. I'm going to connect those just to make life a little bit easier for myself. And then if you were going to be doing the RFID, you would add a couple extra lines in there. You can please reference the instructions on the measurements for those. If you want to add them on, transfer some of these to the outside, you can use a removable marking pin. And so I'm just going to transfer that line over. Make sure to do it to the top and the bottom. And at this time, we can set this one aside for the moment. We're going to grab our two side pieces. Mine are the same regardless, but depending on if you had a directional print, or let's say if you had two different colors, let's say you wanted to mix and match, you would want to make sure, because one side, the part that you're going to hole punch is going to be what's facing forward. So let's say there is a part on here that you're like, oh, I really like this design over on this side. Make sure to have that be on your left, and then vice versa. So it kind of, for mine, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and grab my little pieces here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take my little hole punch. So I'm going to do this part off camera. I'm going to line these up, clip them together to hold the pattern piece and this together. I believe this comes with an SVG to help with the cutout files. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if it does, feel free to use that. But if you don't, grab a nice little hole punch. I'm going to hole punch directly on top of where the lines are. And then I'm going to then take my X-Acto knife, which I have right here. This makes it so much easier. And then I'm going to cut directly on, slice through those lines. So I'm going to do that to this one. And then I'm also going to do it to my other piece. So like I said, I'm going to do those off camera. When I come back, I'll show you what those look like. Right, so here's one of my sides finished. All right, and then I'm going to show you what I did. After you've done all of your hole punching, and then cut your lines with your X-Acto knife or whatever, or scissors maybe, because you can always cut these lines with paper scissors and then transfer them with like a removable marker, and then use scissors to cut them if you want, if you don't have an X-Acto knife. And then I just go through and just double check that my slits are cut all the way from hole to hole. Okay, this one I need a little bit more. Okay, we got those all the way through. And then because mine, you can see I got a little bit of a fray right there. There you go, now you can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this to the back, and then I'm going to push up at each of the slits, and then I'm going to take my lighter and then run across each of those, and that's going to knock down my fray. And so I'm going to go to each of the openings and repeat this all the way down. Now that I've gone through and then heat sealed up all of my little edges so I don't have any fuzzies, now I'm going to be adding my logo. So mine is just a little piece of marine vinyl that I embroidered mine on. So if you wanted to add yours to the exterior pieces, so this side is going to be my front, so you can add it onto the front, or you can add it to the inside on either end. I'm wondering, I think if you wanted to, if you grabbed a piece of clear vinyl, and then right below the last one on either side, you might be able to add an additional piece of clear vinyl on there to be able to put your ID in there. So that way when you open it up with this folded over, you open it and then boom, you can have your ID. It's right there in a little clear little pocket. If you did just choose to do that, just use your ID, make it about, let's say, a 1/4 inch wider all the way around. And it doesn't need to be as tall, and then plus then you can do like little, instead of making it straight across the top, you can always do like a nice little like a swoopy, because this is the inside. So instead of cutting your marine vinyl all the way straight across like that, you can always go over, swoopy, over. So it kind of looks like that. So you could do something like that, or you could do a V, or whatever you want to do if you decide to add a little piece of clear vinyl for your ID. But I would cut it, you don't have to go as tall as your ID, so maybe a little bit shorter to make, so that way it's easy to still grab out if you need to. But width wise, let's just say a 1/4 inch bigger than your ID, and then that way, and then you just sew it down at 1/8 of an inch, so then you have a tiny bit of wiggle room but not a ton. Make sure to, if you do add that, add it just below here. Make sure you leave space on the bottom, because we are going to end up trimming some of the material off on the bottom, so you don't want to go all the way down to the bottom. But yeah, you could easily add a little clear little spot for your ID. I think that'd be kind of cool. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to sew on my little label right there. So I'm going to get that done and I'll be right back. Now that I have my label on, I'm going to go ahead and set my 2 inside pieces to the side. I'm going to grab my exterior and also my lining. If you are doing the RFID, please follow the instructions, because that will go over exact placement, where to attach that on there. So I'm going to be working on, so I'm skipping that part, so I'm jumping down, and then I'm going to be, instead of using glue like it does for if you're using leather, I'm going to be using double-sided stick tape. So I'm going to grab some 1/2 inch double-sided stick tape. I'm going to work on one side. I'm going to add this to all my sides. I'm also going to add it right down the middle. I'm going to add it first to that side. So that way, because when we add it, I'm going to be folding it into that, and then, so it'll make sense here in a moment. So go ahead and remove the paper. All right, so make sure that you have this laying correct, directionally correct. So my top is at the top. And I'm actually going to rotate this so I can work this way. So, but my top is over here, so I know where my top is. I'm going to lay my lining, lining up my edge. My lining is slightly bigger than my exterior, but that's okay, because like I said, we're going to be doing some trimming at the end. So I'm pressing that in, and I'm going to then come up to here. I'm going to pause. We're going to crease at the line. Okay, and I'm pressing my lining into my double-sided stick tape. Okay, so now we need to lay our lining, get our lining attached to the other side. We want to use something that's about 3/8 of an inch wide. My side of my cutting board is a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch, but it's not quite 3/8, but it is the thickest thing that's not larger than 3/8. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. We want to see where our center is. We want to line that up 1/4 of an inch away. There we go. Let's get back into frame. So we have our line, our center line there. We want to be about 1/4 inch of that away. And then we're going to then fold, make sure I'm a little more than 1/4 on the bottom. So make sure you're even across the whole way. Okay, that looks better. Okay, and then hold it still, and then you're going to fold those over, and then pressing your exterior and your lining together. All right, so So now we have a nice little fold. If my lining was way bigger, so it stuck out on this side, you can go ahead and trim that off, but because my lining is right at the edge at this moment, I'm not going to worry about it because like I said before, we are going to do some trimming at the end. So that's doing that little fold over part over something. It allows it to see how it naturally wants to stay closed. That's the part where it's really going to help it to want to stay closed without having to utilize a snap, which is pretty cool. All right, we're going to go ahead and set this side, or we're going to set our exterior to the side for the time being. We're going to be working on our interior pieces. So whatever I do to this one, you're going to repeat for your other one. So we're going to be drawing some lines. First, we're going to draw a 1/2 inch up from the bottom, and you don't want to just draw where this, like the width of those, like you want to draw wide. So you can see how wide I drew that, because it will make sense when we start doing the card slot pieces. You want to be able to see those lines. Okay, and then we're going to draw a second line, so the first line is a 1/2 inch up. Our second line is going to be 1 inch up from the bottom. Next, we're going to draw an 1.5 inches. So make sure you're always drawing your lines using the edge, not the previous line that you already drew. So if you guys are doing the small size, you're only going to draw 3 lines. If you're doing the medium size, you're drawing 5 lines. And then if you're doing the large size like I am, you're going to be drawing 7 lines. Okay, next we're going to grab our double-sided stick tape. We're going to add these. Each of these we're going to do one piece just below each of these slits right along for where our card slots are going to go. And then we're also going to put a piece above the top one right here. So mine's currently upside down, so my top is over here. It just makes it easier to go. So we only want to go in between the holes that we cut. There we go. Or technically you can cut it to, if you want to pre-cut these, you can cut it to 2 3/4. I'm just going right in between the little holes. And then make sure you press those in.
Apologies, I realized after the fact that I wasn't recording this next step, but after you finish adding on your double-sided stick tape for the card slot pieces, you're going to grab your card slot material. You're going to then take your card slots with the double-sided stick tape. You're going to place have that wrong side up so you can see your double-sided stick tape. You're going to take one of your ends of the fabric or the material you're using for your card slots. Remove the double-sided stick tape on the lowest card slot with your excess of your card slot material facing up towards the top. You're then going to place the edge on top of that double-sided stick tape below the lowest card slot. Press that into it. Flip your card slot, that side, completely over, and then you're going to stitch from hole to hole 1/8 inch just below that slit. And then you'll see in the next portion, when I catch myself in the recording, you'll see me explaining where to stitch and then the different folds and everything else, and you can see what it looks like after that first one is done. So if you're worried or concerned about what it's supposed to look like, just wait and then you'll see what it looks like once I start recording again.
So I totally thought I was recording and explaining all of this, and then I looked down and of course my record button is not on. So I will show you guys what I did here on the next one. So we need to grab our double-sided stick tape. I added a piece on the top side of the bottom line that we drew. So press that in. Go ahead and then take off the paper. We're going to grab our material and then kind of press our material down, give it a nice little crease, and then pull it down. So you don't want to over pull, because if you over pull, it's going to cause a separation of your card slot right there. So that's why my finger's on that one. And then I pull gently to get it to lay flat. and then I press it into the double-sided stick tape. Go ahead and remove the paper for the second card slot opening. And then here we're going to fold up our material right here at our line. We're going to crease that there. And so I'm still holding it up so it's not touching that double-sided stick tape on the other one. And then I'm going to bring this back up, push that upwards, and then press it down into the double-sided stick tape. And then flip that over. Wow, I just realized how much it didn't get shown because I wasn't recording. I thought I was. So you didn't even see me doing my stitching or anything. So when you do stitch this, you want to make sure that you are stitching, you don't want to go past the hole. So you can see, as you can see here, I went just in front of it, or you can go right up against it or near it. So I'm about 1/8 inch away from the slit opening there. And so I just stitch right in between from hole to hole. And then depending on your machine, on mine, I leave my threads long, and then I will, after I'm done sewing, I will pull them to the back and then tie them off. But if you don't want to do all the tying off or anything, you can just go stitch forward, back stitch, and then continue on, and then do the same thing when you get to here. Okay, so there's my stitching. So you can see I have my threads are long. You're going to flip that over. So this is my one thread. I'm going to pull on that, and when I pull on that, it brings up a loop. So that's my thread from the front. So let's see there. So you can see the loop there. Then grab something pointy and then go through your loop, and that's going to pull your thread from the front to the back. And then just repeat that for the other side. So I'm here, I pull on my thread in the back, it brings up that loop from the front. Okay, now that both sets of my threads are in the back, what I'm going to do is then I triple knot these. After I triple knot, I'm going to then cut them, and then I will heat seal them. So now that I'm actually recording and you guys can see what the heck I'm doing, I'm not going to explain this part again for the rest of them. So I'll just kind of skip over that part. After you have your threads tied off and knotted, take your lighter and then kind of heat seal them and then smash them in. All right. So this is why it was important to have your threads be long, or not your threads, your markings be long, because now we need to add double-sided stick tape for this line. So we're going to go ahead and use that. And then just above where the marking is off onto the sides, we're going to lay that right on top of our paper, of our material. Make sure to press that in. Go ahead and remove the paper. And then just like we did before, we're going to press the material down. Kind of pull it a little tight. Make sure it lays flat without over tugging. Press that into the double-sided stick tape, and then go ahead and remove the double-sided stick tape for the next one. Then we're going to fold at that line so we can see our line on either side. We're going to crease at the line and then lay this back down and then smooth it out, and then press our material into that double-sided stick tape. There we go. Very nice. And then we're going to stitch to this one. So essentially we just keep going back and forth for all of our card slots. So once you have the double-sided stick tape removed from there, and you're ready for this, we'll stitch here. After we stitch here, we'll add our double-sided stick tape, one row up, fold, remove, fold, and so we just keep repeating that back and forth, back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to put the video is now going to go on a time lapse, so it's going to be, you're going to fast forward through all of this, and then I will show you guys when I get to the end what everything looks like. right, so as you can see, I have stitching below each of my card slots, so I'm on the very last one. So again, we're going to do double-sided stick tape at the line, or just above the line that we drew. Make sure to press that in. Go ahead and remove that. And then just like before, hold your finger up there to hold the crease, and then fold back. And then make sure, one of the big things to do as you're going, make sure that everything for the most part stays in line with each other, because it's really easy to get slightly off as you're folding these up and bringing them back up. But just try your best to make sure that everything stays in alignment, so that way you know that all of your little holes are going to get covered, and then the cards are going to go into the appropriate place. So now we're going to go to our last double-sided stick tape, which is above the card slot opening. Peel that paper off. We're going to make sure to double check our fold. Okay, press that fold, and then we're going to fold up. So you can see here, I know it's black on black, how easy it is. You can see right there how easy it would be to get off, and then you're out of alignment. So just make sure to readjust, smooth that out, and then press that into your tape. We're going to flip this over, and on this last one, we're actually going to stitch above this one. So now instead of, because before I was always stitching this direction, but now I'm going to be stitching this direction. So this is my top card slot, so I'm going to be stitching on the up side of that. And you're going to finish that just like you would all the other ones. And then I have a little bit of excess, so then all you'd have to do is then just take your scissors and then trim that off. And then I'll finish tying those off, and that will complete our all of our card slots. So you can kind of give them a little test and say, there you go. Perfect, beautiful. And so everything that we did for this one set, you're going to repeat for your other side. After you have both of your card slot pieces done, we're going to fold this in half, and we're going to mark our centers on both of them for the top and the bottom. Again, whatever I do to one, you will do for the other one. So marking our center and our center. And then if it makes it easier, go ahead and then make a mark or run a line all the way down. We're also going to, so we have our 1/2 inch line right there from the bottom. We're going to draw a 1/2 inch line on the top. We're going to grab our double-sided stick tape. So I'm using some big ones. And on this one, with our card slots on the right, our line here, we're going to put the double-sided stick tape between the 1/2 inch marks. So the 1/2 inch mark here and the 1/2 inch mark here, double-sided stick tape to this side of our center line.
So I forgot to mention this part in the tutorial. So this little black strip right here that you see in the image, that is a piece of non-stretch material. So if you wanted to use like a piece of ribbon or something that just doesn't stretch, that is what you're going to lay directly on top of that double-sided stick tape that we just put down right there in the center. That is going to allow, or is there to reinforce, so that way your material over time, it just doesn't stretch out. So it's a piece of stabilizer to reinforce it.
When you switch to the other card slots, where the card slots are on this side and you draw your center line, the double-sided stick tape will be to the right of our center line, so on the further side of our card slots. And then if you were using leather, you would put the glue around, but since I don't have that, what I'm also going to do, I'm going to put my double-sided stick tape all the way around. And then if you are doing double-sided stick tape, make sure to press those in. And then go ahead and remove your paper. Okay. After you have your double-sided stick tape removed, kind of squish down the card slots. So we're going to fold this over. So let's go ahead and we're going to line up our tops. There we go. And then right down the edge. Oh, come on. There we go. And again, if they end up being slightly off, we will do a little bit of trimming, so it's not going to be the end of the world if there is a slight discrepancy like mine right here. Okay, so that's what one side is, and then we're still not done with this just yet. We're going to make a couple more marks. We're going to mark a half with a removable marking, 1/2 inch up on the fold side, so the non-raw edge side. So we have our raw edge there and then our folded there. So at the top, the bottom and the top, you're going to measure in a 1/2 inch. And now we're going to stitch in between our two marks. So here's my mark at the top, my mark at the bottom. There we go. So at an 1/8 inch, I'm going to start here and end here. Okay, so that finishes this one. And then if you want to, on this one in the instructions, it does say you can back stitch one, so that way you don't have to pull everything to the back and tie it off. You can just trim your threads from there. So that's if you want to. But this is what it will look like, nice and pretty. And then go ahead and repeat everything that we did for this one, you're going to repeat for your other side. Now that we have both of our card slot sides completed, we're going to then put our double-sided stick tape on 3 of the sides on the back to make sure it's not overlapping on the opening side. We're just going to go right along the edge, and again, whatever I do to one side, you will do for the other. Okay, make sure to press that in. Okay, so this is my right side, so we're going to open up our exterior. Gonna match up the sides. Yeah, my lining is a little on the big side, but that's okay. I can trim that off here in a moment. That'll make the sewing part a little bit easier too. Okay, so press those in. And then yeah, so you can see my lining is a little on the taller side, so I'll make sure to trim. I'm going to trim the bottom off because that will make life a little bit easier already. And then again, you're going to repeat adding the double-sided stick tape to the other side, and then line up your left side. All right, so we have both sides are now attached in there. All right, this next part, you can either draw the lines or you can use your ruler and rotary blade. You're going to measure and cut off 1/4 inch from all 4 sides. Okay, so for myself, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna, using my mat and stuff like that, I'll line that up with my mat, get the 1/4 inch, and then slice that off. Okay, so I'm gonna get those cut down, and I'll be right back. After you have all your sides cut down, you're going to grab your little corner piece, and then you're gonna line that up with your corner. And then I'm going to just draw the little curve. So then I need to trim that. And so you'll add this little swoop to all 4 of your corner pieces if you decide to have the rounded corners. If you like the squared corners, then just leave it as it is. You don't have to do the curved corners if you don't want to. But if you do, just make sure to draw the corners, trim that down, and I'll be right back. Now that I have all my corners trimmed up, now it's time to sew it together. Okay, so we're going to be sewing around this at 1/8 of an inch. It's recommended to start in this upper corner here. So get yourself lined up. And then we are going to back stitch on this one. Okay. As we come up to these little, where the folded pieces are, we are going to back stitch over each of those. So we still have 3 more that we need to do a little back stitch over, okay? right, we're getting back to where we started, so we're going to stitch up to it. There we go. And then we're going to pull our threads along. And then what we're going to try to do is we're going to pull our threads to this side, and then we're going to feed them underneath right in there. And that's what we're going to, so I'll take my needle, we'll put the threads through the eye, and we'll go through there, and then we'll tie them off and we'll kind of push them back up in there. Okay, so for right now, go ahead and then we'll pull our threads to the inside. Because I back stitched at the beginning, I'm not going to be able to pull the start thread through, but that's okay. I can trim that one off. So we're going to put the needle, so we're going to go through one of the holes. So I'm lifting up the opening here. There we go. So I'm using, it's kind of more of a little bit blunt of a needle, not super crazy sharp. So now I have all my threads that are on this side through the eye of the needle. And then I'm going to push the rest of the needle through. And then we're going to pull. Sometimes that needle is kind of hard to grab. Okay, cool, I got it. And what we're going to do, we're going to tie off these threads. Make sure to pull your threads nice and tight because we want to try to keep it underneath that fold over there. There we go. And then if you're able to get your lighter in there or like a heat source to be able to, they're pretty far in there. So I'm actually not going to worry about that one. But then this one is the one that I couldn't pull through because I top stitched, or I back stitched at the beginning. So then I just need to do a little dab. All right, so that finishes the sewing process. So you can see how it wants to lay pretty dang closed for the most part without even having to have a snap. If you end up putting a little bit, if you like a bunch of cards in here and really pack it in there, you can always get like a cute little rubber band or make like a band to go around this to kind of hold it in place. Or if you wanted to, you can add a band that goes from here, that's attached here and here, and then goes around. You don't have to if you don't want to, but technically for how it is designed, you really don't need it. Just depends on how much you pack into it. So the next things that would need to be done to this to really get this to the next level and also a finished look is to do edge coating. I personally don't have all of my things to do edge coating yet. It's a work in progress to find it. I'm not entirely sure if I really like edge coating, so I'm trying. But if you do follow the instructions, it goes into great detail how to be able to do your edge coating, all the steps, the process for it. And so I know I will be following those instructions for when I do finally get all of my stuff to be able to have a really nice finished edge to this. So that is it for my tutorial on the Walletta from Casey Original. Again, this is the large size. So the large size will fit US bills vertically in here without having to fold them in half. And so you definitely have lots of card slots available for yourself. And again, if you wanted to add on that little clear pocket piece right here for if you wanted to put your ID right there. But either way, I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching.